Hello all you Warhammer Fantasy loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to sit down and review Total War Warhammer 2, the latest edition in the Total Warhammer trilogy by Creative Assembly and Sega. So let's get right into the game because this is a game that many of us have long awaited. It is the second in the trilogy. You know, Total War Warhammer as a franchise was originally touted as a 3-game trilogy, each expanded on the last and being able to combine the content of each iteration into the last, so that eventually you would have 3 games and in one basically, and it would be a massive game. Total Warhammer 2, it's going to be a difficult one this, because I want to start on something that I feel is a real negative about the game. Before we even get into the mechanics, the changes, the new races, let's talk about that issue. The issue of the game being essentially an expansion, yet a standalone game, but not really, and them selling it on that premise, because it can be a little bit of an issue. So the first is the most glaring obvious issue. Where is the grand campaign? Because in Total War Warhammer 2, there isn't one currently. There is no grand campaign. There is no way to link the content of the first game into the second game so you can play as all of the races in a grand campaign. There's no way to do that. That major feature, that feature that they built the foundation of the franchise on, is non-existent right now. Now it has been promised post-launch, maybe like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a month after launch, but that's still not there right now. And they're asking you to pay £40, so you're looking at, what, $50 to $60? So the game is priced as a full standalone game. Not to mention the fact that if you're brand new to the series, you're going to have to buy both games, meaning that you're going to be spending upwards of potentially $100 just as an entry fee into the franchise and be up to date where everyone else is. So those two things are pretty glaring negatives in my opinion. I'm looking at it as a consumer perspective. You know, you've promised players this idea of building upon the last game, bringing in new features, new content with every expansion / sequel, and then, you know, combining them all into one hell of a fantastic Warhammer Total War experience. And yet that is not existent at the launch of the second game. So that's a really glaringly obvious bad thing, and it's a real negative on the game, and it really does hurt it in my opinion. Now, while the game does have its separate standalone expansion, like a lot of the DLC did, it still remains the fact that basically what you have here is a fully priced game with 4 races to play and a new map. And that's basically it in the grand scope of things. And that is, for me, it's a really big problem. And I don't condone that kind of crap. That is just really slapping the players in the first. You should have had that grand campaign at launch. Straight off, no holds barred. That should have been included in the launch of the game because, one, you've built the foundation of the franchise on that fact, and it's something that everybody was expecting to have at launch. And the fact that it isn't there is a massive disappointment. So putting that negative and that major negative aside, let's focus on the new content and the changes that have come in Total War Warhammer 2. Now I have to say, putting aside the fact that I'm annoyed about the grand campaign to an extreme, I have to say I absolutely love the game. I love it from top to bottom. I love the new mechanics, I love the new races because the addition of my favourite race from the Warhammer Fantasy franchise is there, of course the Dark Elves. I absolutely love the Dark Elves. For Warhammer 40,000 I love the Eldar, so it's just one of those things, I'm all about those elves. The Dark Elves are fantastic. The Lizardmen, the Skaven, the High Elves, each race plays as you would expect it to, which is it has unique mechanics, it has unique overworld play, it has unique in-battle play, and there's a bunch of new features here within the franchise that have not only improved upon what has came before, but I would think not only the major content additions, but also the smaller changes. There's a ton of smaller changes, including quality of life changes, that just make as a Total War Warhammer game make it so much better than what has come before. They have really sat down and listened to our issues from the first game and have actually done something about it, which is all fair play to Creative Assembly. So all the new races are fantastic. I absolutely love the fact that they're varied, they're unique. You can play the Dark Elves and the High Elves, and they're going to play very differently. They have different focuses, they have different units, they have different abilities. So let's go down in a list about what's new in Total War Warhammer 2. First is the map, of course. The new map and the new campaign for Total War Warhammer 2 is all are centered around the Great Vortex, which in the lore is basically a massive maelstrom that was created by the elves to siphon the excess energy from the winds of magic so that the chaos demons could not use it, basically, and then all the demons died, etc. So it's all about this end game goal is basically taking control or doing something, depending on your faction, whatever your faction's motives are, to do something to that maelstrom. That is due because the comet has come by and disrupted it and basically made the vortex weak and susceptible to attack. So that's the end game goal. The way that you achieve that end game goal is that you have to, at certain points through the campaign, basically perform rituals at certain locations, and you only able to perform rituals by, one, having that location captured by yourself, two, having enough resources, depending on your faction, to actually perform the ritual, and three, you have to actively try and stop other factions from performing their own rituals. So it's a really nice endgame goal. There's a really nice meta to the game, and I think that it's a lot more fun as an endgame goal than the Chaos Invasion of the first game was. I certainly think that the Chaos Invasion of the first game just happened way too fast for a start, and it was kind of very anticlimactic in that sense. This is not. It's very story driven. It works really well because everyone's going for the same thing versus just trying to be a powerful force and then defeating an invasion. It's very much more focused, more centric, and ultimately works in the game's benefit. Next is obviously the new races. Like I've mentioned, all of them are fantastic. The Lizardmen are very unique. They're really fun to play. The Skaven in particular are a race that I hate to face on the battlefield, but they are really fun to play as because they're very unique, and you have to think about how you are going to play a race that, while is large in numbers, is basically individually weak and can have to be kind of boosted in certain areas to make them more powerful. But let's get on to the most exciting stuff for me personally. First, exploration has been changed. So, for example, instead of ruins just being ruins of settlements, you can actually delve into them and explore for treasure. And this brings up a choice system whereby you're given a scenario and you have to make a choice, and depending on what choice you make, it gives you a different outcome. So, for example, you find a sword that is glowing purple. You can choose to pick it up, you can choose to purify the room, you can choose to give it to one of your soldiers, or you leave it alone, that kind of thing. Now, depending on what you do, it's going to have a different outcome. So I chose to take the sword because who doesn't want a purple glowing sword? And found out that it was cursed, and then that gave my general a negative trait. Stuff like that is really fun in Total War Warhammer 2. There's multiple different scenarios and situations where you can find treasure, including because the sea and sea exploration is a much more bigger thing because the actual map is an archipelago of islands. What you end up having is sea encounters as well, so you're going to have strange islands, you're going to have shipwrecks, you're going to have all kinds of things going on within the game world itself that really just, I think, enhances the overworld experience and ultimately makes it a more pleasure to play rather than just waiting for the next battle. Now, also tied to the new campaign and the new map is rights. Now, each playable race in Total War Warhammer 2 basically gets 4 rites, which are basically kind of like rituals, whereby if you have the requirements, you can perform a rite, and that rite will then have an effect on something. So, for example, one of the Dark Elves rites is the ability to improve public order by 8, and leaders have a chance to gain loot or something like that. And you're able to do these multiple times during the campaign. Each rite has a cooldown period, but what they can do is they can really put in some really good bonuses, some powerful bonuses, and if you use them at the right time, they can really change the flow of the overworld campaign. So, if you're really struggling with low public order, then you want to perform a rite that boosts that public order and allows you to avoid the formation of rebel factions. Also, I really enjoyed the fact that you have all kinds of new systems on the overworld for leaders specifically. So, particularly for the Skaven and the Dark Elves, they're going to have a loyalty mechanic, whereby each new lord that is recruited is going to have a loyalty rating, and depending on your actions and that leader's actions, such as be successfully completing missions, then the loyalty is going to go up or down. If the loyalty goes down too further, then they're going to break away and try and take power from themselves and become a rebel faction, which actually potentially ends up meaning that you can have a very powerful lord that you've built up, and he betrays you. And that adds a really nice element for those two races. I also like the fact that you have a brand new trait system in place. So legendary lords and regular lords are going to be able to gain both positive and negative traits. But on top of that, you're going to have lords gain traits based on their activities, and then on top of that enhance certain traits based on activities. So for example, if you create a lord and their sole purpose is to basically sit in one of your provinces for the sake of public order, then what's going to happen is, if they sit in a province that's got low public order, they're going to gain the Iron Disciplinarian trait, and then the longer and more turns that they're actively doing that, they're going to gain more bonuses to that trait. So they're going to, instead of it being a +1 to public order, maybe they enhance it to +4 public order, etc., etc. If you string a bunch of successful attacks at that together, then your attacking trait is going to be boosted and bonused up and up and keep going. And it's a really fun system that I think rewards you for active play. It rewards you for the play style that you have chosen to do, and ultimately adds a little bit of depth within the trait system itself. One of the biggest changes to the overworld campaign is universal territory capture. What that basically means is, one of the biggest gripes about the original Total War Warhammer was the fact that factions could only capture certain cities within their factions. So humans could only capture like human style territories, and they couldn't capture dwarfs and goblins and orcs and that kind of thing. They could not capture those territories. Here in Total War Warhammer 2, that has been done away with. What you actually have is you're able to capture any type of settlement you want. However, each settlement basically is going to have a climate status, right? So if you are the Dark Elves, you're going to like lowlands, and lowlands, you're going to have nice traits and nice bonuses to any settlements you have in the lowlands. If you capture mountainous areas, what that's going to mean is that's going to have a direct effect on the, basically the efficiency of that settlement. So it might gain a negative to economy, it might gain a negative to public order, that kind of thing. So it means that it broadens your options in terms of territorial expansion, but it comes at a cost, and you have to weigh up that cost. And I think it is the best way to do it without reverting back to the old system, because it still gives you the option to now capture any territory you want, but you need to know that that expansion is going to have to be weighed by your current resources and the current raidability of lords and troops. Overall, the overworld gameplay is improved in almost every way in Total War Warhammer 2. The combat itself is also improved in some ways. In other ways, it's pretty much the same as you have seen before. There are a couple of nice additions, like choke point battles. So One of the things like from Rome Total War that you had was choke point maps, where you had, you know, certain terrain environments that were going to be beneficial in certain areas. And what it basically means is that they've improved the variety of maps to allow for different styles of play. One of the things that really annoyed me about Total War Warhammer was that outside of certain areas, you basically got the same type of terrain, the same type of map, and it led to basically very flat battles that you weren't really able to exploit terrain advantage. And this is not the case in Warhammer 2. You have multiple different types of terrain. You're going to have maps that are going to be able to be exploited to your advantage, or indeed to the enemy's advantage, and it just adds a little bit of tactical depth to the game overall. You also have army abilities, so each race is able to unlock a variety of army specific abilities which can be activated in battle. These are all unique and they can be unlocked in different ways depending on your army and your race. And these can do a variety of things. They can offer offensive bonuses, defensive bonuses. Sometimes you're able to spawn a new unit in battle, that kind of thing. And again, it just adds a little bit of tactical depth and variety to what has come before. I think overall, Total War Warhammer 2 is a fantastic game. I'm very annoyed about the lack of Grand Campaign at launch. I think that is a real dick move. But overall, in terms of its core content, the core mechanics behind the game itself, it is an improvement in almost every single aspect of Total War Warhammer 1. I think once the Grand Campaign has been implemented and then you have access and the combination of the two games, I think that's when you really want to buy it. I think if you don't want to play the new campaign, which is a fairly large campaign, don't get me wrong, the Vortex map is a big ass map, but it only has 4 races on there, 4 playable races, then I think you want to wait till the implementation of the Grand Campaign. If you don't want to wait and you just want to play the new campaign, the new races and the multiplayer, then it's certainly worth a buy right now. I think that overall, apart from the couple of negatives that the game has, it is certainly moving in the right direction overall. It is one hell of a fun Total War game. You know, I always said that one of the best, you know, for me, Total War Warhammer was the best Total War game in the series, flat out, because it was just fantastic. And this has just taken that and made it even better. And so by that accord, this is potentially going to be the best Total War game to date. It is fantastic from start to finish. Total War fan, Warhammer Fantasy fan, you're gonna absolutely love it. And that is my review of Total War Warhammer 2. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and as always, I will see you next time.